How do you dress for mass? Hopefully wearing Sunday best. I'm Simon Rafe, and I'm taking the hardline. Welcome back to Hardline, the show that upsets you because I'm right. I'm Simon Rafe, and joining me later will be Joe Enders, my producer, and Jules Gomesh, our Rome correspondent. We will be having fine and intellectual chats you can listen to and say, quite so, quite so. But for now, let's talk about what you're wearing at Mass. And when I say you, I mean you if you are a dude, a guy, a man, a person assigned male at birth. Unlike many people out there, I know what is a woman, and I know I'm not going to be addressing the subject of what women should wear at Mass. It's a good topic. It's a conversation that is worth having, but I'm not having it today. It's not even that a man shouldn't be telling a woman how to dress, although I suppose there is a little bit of that. Maybe Christine Niles can tackle the subject on her show Forward Boldly. I'm not addressing it today. The reason I'm not addressing it is that the main problem, and let's be honest here, the main perceived problem with women's dress at Mass is that it's immodest, it's undignified, it denigrates rather than elevates the feminine, it's distracting and may tempt others to sin. And all of that is probably true, although I will be honest and say a tangential hardline here is that the sin it tempts people to is more often than not rash judgment and uncharity rather than unchastity. Especially for you. And by you, I mean the ladies, the girls, the females, the what that is a woman. If you are a woman and you are watching this, then I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think dressing immodestly for Mass is really all that big a problem for you. If I were to talk about it, it would be me railing against someone other than you, and you would be able to go, quite so, and feel good about yourself, united by a feeling of superiority against someone else. Thank you, Lord, that I am not like that tax collector who dresses like a slut. So, I'm not going to talk about what you are wearing at Mass if you're a woman, but I am going to talk to you if you are a woman because, well, let's be honest here, ladies, what men wear in social settings is often strongly influenced by the women in their lives. So don't tune out if you're a lady, but realize that I'm talking to you and taking you to task as well as the guys. With all of that said, gentlemen, can we start dressing properly for Mass? And when I say we, I mean you, because I dress like this, plus a matching jacket. Maybe you do. If you do, great. Please continue to do so and encourage other men to ape your sartorial style. If you have authority over any of these men, they are your sons, employees, what have you. If you have authority over them, exercise it. Don't just encourage, require. But if you don't dress properly for Mass, start. I am deathly serious. Every single time I go to Mass, and it doesn't matter where I go or to what kind of Mass, it can be a full orchestral TLM with choirs and incense and priest and deacon and subdeacon and enough altar boys for none of them to have to do more than one thing. Or it can be a Midwestern suburban boomer Novus Ordo Mass where the priest invites the congregation to shout out their own contributions to the prayers of the faithful. It doesn't matter where I go, what kind of Mass it is. There are always, without exception and without fail, men dressed inappropriately, casually, not smartly, informally. Call it whatever you want. Sometimes it's even scruffily or slovenly. Jeans and a t-shirt, sneakers, a sports jersey showing the number and name and team of some overpaid ball handler. If it's hot, maybe shorts and flip-flops. In the winter, some coat that Amundsen would have found useful during his sojourn to the South Pole. Maybe none of it is ironed. Maybe it's pulled or stretched or a little bit dirty. It often has some branding or a logo on it, the name of the aforementioned posse of ball handlers, a music group, or just the name of the corporate fashion house. I use the term under advisement. Maybe just the name of the corporate fashion house who designed it and paid pennies to a sweatshop to have it sewn. You know exactly what I am referring to, and you are already starting to pretend you don't. You want to make this about me telling you to dress like a fashion plate, like it's black tie, that you need to be rocking a $3,000 set of tailored Armani, or I think you're a slob. You want to argue the outlier cases of the person who has literally no clothes other than jeans and a t-shirt, or the hard-working blue-collar guy with mud on his steel coat, toe caps, and dirt under his fingernails who is coming to Mass after a long stint in the mines or the factory or the mill. I ain't talking about any of that, and you know it. I ain't talking about the time when you are on vacation and you are walking through the streets of the quaint little Maine fishing village and there's a church and you nip in just to see it and Mass is just starting, so you stay, and surely the mean old limey wouldn't tell you I have to miss Mass rather than attend in my women want me fish fear me t-shirt. I ain't talking about the situation where your car breaks down and you have to change the tire and your suit is ruined and you have a set of overalls in your car, so you wear them and oh right, so I'd throw you out of Mass, even though you got there in time for it and got the family there just because you're dressed like Beau Brummel. I ain't talking about any of that, and you know it. I'm talking about the general, normal state of affairs. When you get up in the morning for a 9:30 Mass at your parish, and it's a half-hour drive away, so you leave at 8:30 to get there in time, so you're putting your clothes on at 8, and pick something smart. A shirt with a collar and cuffs, a sports jacket, maybe a tie. Certainly leather dress shoes and trousers that aren't made of denim. Definitely not some branded jacket, not a t-shirt or polo shirt. Maybe, just maybe, throw on a suit. A suit is not an expensive investment, gentlemen. There are places in every major city where you can get a suit for probably less than you spend on your ensemble of jeans and t-shirt and sneakers. It's a good investment because there are so many times when you can wear it. If you were going to meet the head of state, the president, the king, whatever is appropriate for your country, if you were going to meet the head of state, you would wear a suit. Even assuming you don't dine at the White House on the regular, there are always times when you are meeting someone of a higher rank in a formal situation. If you were going to the bank to beg forgiveness on a loan you desperately needed but had no chance of paying back, you would wear a suit. If you were going to court to beg a judge for leniency for a crime you committed, some transgression that you could be justly punished for, you would wear a suit. If you were going to meet a man and ask for permission to court his daughter, or even to ask for her hand in marriage, you would wear a suit. Or if not a suit, something smart, possibly formal, certainly not casual. It would be elegant and sophisticated and not associated with leisure or comfort or ease or athletics or relaxation. Because all of these examples, the head of state, the creditor forgiving you, the judge showing mercy, the man granting a beautiful largesse, all of these examples are what you are doing at Mass, but even more so. You are begging forgiveness for awful crimes. You are begging mercy on a debt you can never repay. You are meeting the literal king of the universe. And you are entering into the most wonderful love story the world has ever known. And you go schlepping up in jeans and a t-shirt because what? Because it's comfortable? Because God doesn't mind, he's just happy I'm there? Because you've got to cut out and get to the ball game afterwards? Let me tell you why you go up in jeans and a t-shirt. It's because it doesn't really matter to you. Oh, you'll say that's not true. You will say you demand to receive on the tongue, that you receive kneeling. You will say you insist on only attending reverent masses, masses where the priest preaches the homilies he should be preaching. And all of that is true and probably wonderful. But when and if you dress for Mass in something other than your Sunday best, well, you are giving God not your best. It's that simple. The Catholic life is not a collection of separate grades that are averaged out. So if you do badly on something, but well on another, it all balances out and you pass. It is a series of separate things, and you are expected, no, you are required to give your best in each of those. God demands your best. He doesn't demand the best. He demands your best. And for clothing for Mass, that means Sunday best, your best. I'm not talking about some objective standard where you get tossed out on your ear if you don't have this season's fashion. I'm not talking about outlier cases of emergency or damage or surprise, although I'm doing something after Mass is never an excuse. Carry the workaday clothes in your car and change after Mass. I'm not talking about outlier cases of the impoverished, the working man squeezing Mass in between the shifts he has to work for his family, the time your washing machine exploded, and all you have is the "my sister went to Boca Raton and all she got me was this lousy t-shirt." I am talking about the general, normal situation where you get up in the morning and you pick your clothes. Or when your wife or mother picks your clothes. Ladies, prick up your ears, I'm talking to you now. Women have an enchanted, nearly supernatural power over men in their household. That power is not your persuasive charms focused through your beauty and loveliness, although you do have that. No, the power you have in a traditional Catholic household is simple. You do the laundry. You determine what is clean, what is available, what is laying out for the men in your house to put on. Ladies, if your husband or sons aren't dressing right for Mass, you have the power to change that, and you should, and they will welcome it because of your persuasive charms focused through your beauty and loveliness. Because this is the final point I will finish on. It's for the single guys. Gents, a well-fitted suit, even just a set of smart clothes, when all your contemporaries are dressed like they're going skateboarding, a well-fitted suit on a guy is like catnip to a young lady. It silently says a whole bunch of things about you to her, and more importantly, to her parents. Gentlemen, if you want to get someone to do your laundry, you need to start paying attention to it yourself. So Joe, what do you think?
Well, I'm just kind of curious, Simon. Is it safe to come out? Because that was quite a passionate display there about.
Am I talking to you, Joe?
Yeah, you're kind of talking to me a little bit. I'm definitely guilty of this. I've been to Mass. No, I'm not the jeans and a t-shirt guy. I've obviously done that before, but it's usually in those emergency situations that you're talking about, of which I can't even tell you how many times that's wound up happening to me throughout the years. But I've gone to church. I've gone to Mass in a polo shirt. I mean, more times than I can count, just because it's a hot summer day, it's comfortable, and I don't like necessarily suffering through an entire Mass. But at the end of the day, you're kind of right. I mean, you're. I don't know what to say. You're kind of right. I should be dressing better in those situations. And I've upped my game a little bit. I'm not suit and tie yet, but I'm getting there.
You're getting there. I mean, again, a suit is shorthand for like something smart, something not informal, not casual. Look, I see a whole bunch of guys at my parish, which is a good, solid, like traditional parish for want of a better word. I see a bunch of guys there who are in jeans and a t-shirt regularly, week after week after week. And I know for a fact that the jobs they have, the jobs they do, require them to wear suits or business casual at work. So it's like, okay, so for 5 days a week when you're working for the man, you're working for corporate America, you will do this, you'll dress smartly. But when you come to God, you won't. And that's the issue that I'm getting. It's about bringing your best and what your best represents. Obviously, when we talk about things like a suit and a tie and collared shirt and so forth, that's really speaking very much to the Western model. There may be people out here who are watching in countries where a suit and a tie is not considered smart and formal. There may be something else, at which point, obviously, yes, you should be wearing that. But yeah, I am very passionate about this because it's kind of a minimum thing that you can make as a guy to turn up, to dress nicely. We talk about a lot, or I don't, because I avoid the subject, as I said, but a lot of conversation is said about women dressing at Mass, and they should dress in a particular way, they shouldn't dress in another way. Well, guys need to step up and be smart. And I think that's a thing, that women will elevate the men in their lives, and men will elevate the women in their lives through their sartorial choices.
Well, one of the things that I thought was the most interesting about what you said was that the reason that people are doing it is because, it doesn't really matter enough to them. It doesn't really matter enough to them. And I don't know from a personal reflection that I would say that, but the analogies that you made to the courtroom and stuff like that, it is a real analogy. That is actually what you're going to Mass for. It's your profession that Jesus, your profession of faith. You're asking Jesus to advocate for you at your final judgment. Through his sacrifice on the cross. I mean, I don't know how to say that. And yes, I would show up to court in a suit and tie because I'd be very afraid of the consequences of not. So maybe, just maybe, Catholics should start being afraid of the consequences of not treating their faith as if it is as important as many of these other temporal institutions that affect your life.
Yeah, and I think as well, you see a lot of Protestant communities, and they're dressing very smartly for Mass, that they're actually coming out and they're really showing us Catholics up, that we are just sort of treating Mass as if it's not the central event of the week. On Sunday Mass, because obviously that's when most people are going to Mass.
Central event of the week, it's the central event of the universe.
Yes, exactly, and we're turning up in very casual clothes. We always talk about the problem of receiving, for example, the Holy Communion on the hand as opposed to on the tongue. And one of the main arguments for receiving Holy Communion not in the hand is so it's not just like a cracker or a cookie or something like that. It's not like it's normal food. It's supernatural food is what it is. And us turning up and dressing like we're just participating in kind of average general stuff that you do on the weekend, like you're going to the ball game, like you're going shopping, like you're just working out in the garden or whatever. If we're turning up to Mass dressed like it's just the rest of the week, then is Mass in any way really different from the rest of the week in many ways? Again, is God going to sit there and throw you in hell because you didn't dress smartly for Sunday Mass? I don't think that he is. But does the failure to dress smartly for Mass, does it speak to and does it influence a pattern of thought which may result in you hearing a very kind of distressing judgment from God when he interviews you? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, Joe. We will be talking next week. And now we shall be shifting over to our gentleman's chat, where I will be chatting with Jules Gomesh in Rome. So, Jules, you, of course, are in Rome, but some of the most exciting things are happening, well, elsewhere in Europe. I know the Anglican Communion, which is Anglican but not particularly communy, it seems, they're having a fun time, let's say.
Well, Simon, I was an Anglican priest for 25 years, and it breaks my heart, quite honestly. I don't rejoice in the downfall of the Church of England because, I was blessed doing ministry there, and there are jewels in Anglicanism, like Anglican chant, for example. However, this week, General Synod is meeting. And now this is why Catholics really need to pay attention, because it is the synodal model that has killed the Church of England. And the Catholic Church is desperate to adopt the synodal model, which virtually, as you and I talked about this, Cardinal Mueller said this, is an attempt to Protestantize and democratize the Holy Roman Catholic Church. Now, one of the more interesting things that has just happened is while the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury, there is only one, and he's Anglican, pinched the seat of, St. Augustine, while he was holding hands with Pope Francis in South Sudan, and holding hands, and Pope Francis was holding his hand and the hand of the moderator of the Church of Scotland, Ian Greenshields, a Muslim, the top Muslim leader in England, Paul Salahuddin Armstrong, wrote a stinker to Justin Welby saying that if you're going to go ahead with same-sex blessings, which is what is happening even as we speak, then we are pulling out Muslim children from Muslim schools. Actually, he didn't go to the extent of saying this, but he said, my goodness, what are you guys doing? We stand for traditional marriage, and you and the Church of England are taking a wrecking ball to traditional marriage. And conservative Anglicans are now saying if the Church of England goes ahead with this, and if Muslims are serious about what they're saying, then thousands of Muslim children will be pulled out of Anglican schools. Now, sadly, of course, Catholic schools have also jumped on the bandwagon of, progressive sexuality and are ramming this down children's throats there. And we've done a number of stories on this at Church Militant.
Yes, I mean, I think, it's sort of an interesting thing that we always kind of tend to think of, that the Muslims, Islam is standing very much against the Christian ideal, very much against the Christian West, and obviously in many ways they are. But also we see here, in terms of like a traditional sexual morality, traditional marriage, it seems to be the Muslims that are actually holding the line. It may very well be the case that if there is any defense of traditional marriage mounted in the United Kingdom and maybe elsewhere, that it's actually going to come from the Islamics. So it's sort of just a bizarre, topsy-turvy world that we're living in. But also, there's been some news, Jules, about the idea that if the Anglican Church is forced by Parliament to accept gay marriage, or homosexual marriage, or marriage as we would say, that it will lead to this disestablishment of the Anglican Church, which would be, for the average kind of American or the average Catholic, that's neither here nor there. But really, that's actually quite a big impact politically and theologically to the Anglican Church. Can you talk about that?
Well, that's a very good question, Simon, because this establishment is going to be a long and complicated process in Parliament. Now, I don't think they will actually go ahead with it because, it's a slowly catching monkey in this case. What the Church of England will do is, and I can bet on this, I am not a betting man, but the Church of England will go ahead in the next 3 or 4 days with same-sex blessings. They've got the vote for it. And I was speaking to somebody who has very good connections in General Synod, and he was telling me that they have deliberately chosen not to go down the route of same-sex marriage because that's doctrinal, and they need a 2/3 vote to push that ahead, which at this stage they don't have. So they're going to stick with, just the liturgy kind of thing, which is not doctrine. However, because Catholic bishops have had a fascination with the Church of England's establishment, and I was I was one of the top clergymen there, the canon theologian at the Church of England's largest cathedral in the world, and I notice they love to be with Anglicans because the Anglicans in civic ceremonies, etc., are always in the limelight, part of the establishment, and the Catholic bishops want to be there. They don't want to be sidelined and second-class citizens. They want to have seats in the House of Lords like the Anglican bishops do. And therefore, what happens in terms of theological trends when the Church of England goes one step ahead, the Catholic bishops immediately line up and say, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to actually follow these guys?"
Yeah, it's very interesting because, of course, here in America, we have this sort of feeling that the Catholic Church became establishment. It became it got the seat at the table, as we said. When initially, of course, the Catholic Church here was a religion of the immigrants, of the working class, really of very much second-class citizens, the Polish, the Irish, the Italians, and so forth. And it was the Protestant immigrants to the United States who were the establishment and were holding these things. And of course, you now see this where the Catholic bishops have adopted this establishment position, this influence within politics, both local and national. And of course, I remember a very prescient statement when I was back in the UK, a decade and a half more ago, when it was said that middle-class people in the UK, which means a slightly different thing than middle-class people here in the US, but middle-class people and, of course, upper-class people in the US did not feel that the Catholic Church was for them because the Catholic Church was for the working class. It was for the impoverished. It was for example, the Irish immigrants and those sort of people. And so it was not a theological issue. It was not an ecclesial issue. It was not anything else. It was purely a class issue. It was purely an issue of your social standing, that Anglicanism was seen as being more respectable. And of course, we have to wonder, what does Jesus think about human respectability?
Well, it's not very different in England, as you know, in some ways, because in England, the Anglican Church has been, we used to say it was the Tory party at prayer. Now, of course, it's the Lib Dems at prayer, or even worse, the Greens, Greta Thunberg at prayer. But, and it was the Catholic Church in England that was the church of the prayer, again, Irish, etc., etc. The Anglicans, of course, particularly the Anglo-Catholic movement, did make inroads into the working class, but that wasn't across the board. However, what we see now is a meltdown of the entire landscape and Islam taking over. and Islam now becoming the dominant religion in England. I used to say this: there are more Muslims in mosques on a Friday than there are Catholics and Protestants in churches on a Sunday, or at least Catholics and Anglicans in churches on a Sunday. And it's the same with France. So Islam is becoming an increasingly strong voice in the public square. And while the establishment, the government policymakers will dismiss Anglicanism and Catholicism, they will listen to Islam. And in the area of homosexuality, we had a massive problem 3 or 4 years ago. I was part of this, where we collaborated with Muslims, Orthodox Jews, evangelical Christians, and conservative Catholics to form a coalition to protest the government's imposition of quite horrendous LGBT education on 4-year-olds. We lost at the end of the day. And one of the reasons we lost is because both the Anglican bishops and the Catholic bishops stood by the government. In fact, both these groups of chaps and mitres invited the government, oh, come on, give us all the garbage that you have, pour it down our schools. And it was Muslims, the only community in England, not the Catholics, not evangelicals, it was Muslims who protested day after day, week after week at a school in Saltley in Birmingham. And that really became the flashpoint for this protest across England and Wales. And, my friends were part of this. I was supporting this movement. And as you said, it's great irony that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with Muslims. With and there's a kind of new ecumenical, if I may call it that, coalition of people from all religions who value the traditional family and want to stand for the family, because all of us regard family as the bedrock of society and something non-negotiable.
Yeah, well, I think, obviously, Jules, we're kind of running out of time here, but I will just say that obviously that is in many ways very good news. And I think that the thing that we should be doing as Catholics is trying to use that common ground on morality to actually evangelize the Muslims, because, of course, Islam is a false religion. It is a religion of, endless theological errors. But in this moral aspect, they are right. Perhaps that can be a way to speak to them, a way to evangelize them, so that we can have somewhat of a resurgence of Christianity within the West. Jules, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. We will speak to you next week from Rome, when Pope Francis will be back and will have been back, and I'm certain that we will have plenty to discuss about things that he said. Jules, always a pleasure to talk to you. God bless.
God bless, Simon. Thank you.
Always wonderful to hear from Jules. Always has a lot to say. And I think those Anglican topics, maybe that's something we need to explore a bit more. It's something people don't really know about. And then, of course, my experience with Anglican churches back in England, a little bit out of date perhaps, but they always dressed really nicely. And so, gentlemen, should you. I'm Simon Rafe, and I've taken the hard line.